Well, I don't know about you, but I needed that song after the weather we're getting this weekend. Are you hearing me? All right, does that make you feel a little bit better? Yeah. Hey, we're so glad you're here. It's a beautiful day somewhere in the world. I don't know where, but we are glad that you are here. We also are so glad that our campuses are joining us right now in Cottage Grove and Eagan and Hastings and Woodbury and our YouTube channel as well. That song that you just heard, which is called A Million Dreams, is an awesome, awesome song. If you were not paying attention to the lyrics, I want to go back to them with you for just a moment, all right? Because what they say to us is pretty profound. Here they are, and I won't sing, I promise, I won't sing. Because every night I lie in bed, yeah, the brightest colors fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it's going to take. A million dreams for the world we're going to make. Who doesn't love a song about dreaming big dreams? I mean, you do and I do. We all love big dreams. And I think we'd also go back in time and look at across history at the great accomplishments that we've seen in our lifetimes. They've all been birthed from what? From great dreams that someone had. But I think we also know, I know you know this and I know this, that if all we do is dream, if all you do and I do are dream even a million dreams or a billion dreams, if all we do is dream dreams, all we're going to end up with at the end of the day is nothing but a bunch of what? Dreams. Yeah. So I think dreams are important, but we need more than dreams. And speaking of dreams, what would you say God's dream is for our world? Do you ever think about that? If I asked you right now, what is God's dream for our world? What would you say? Because I believe that God's a dreamer. I really do. In fact, I would say, if you ask me, I would say that God's dream for our world is the same dream that a mom or a dad has when their wayward child goes off the deep end. The same, when a mom or dad has let's say a teenager who rebels, who goes AWOL, who becomes a prodigal son or a prodigal daughter, that dream that those parents have is the exact same dream I believe that our Father in heaven has for our world. Here's how I put it. God's dream is that those who are far from him would draw near. I think that's what God is dreaming about right now. Not you and me in church, but those people out there who are far from him. And we as a church, we have a dream as well. Our dream aligns, we believe, with God's dream. Our dream as a church is to see more people in more places meet and be changed by Jesus. That's our dream. That's what we lie around here thinking about. How do we reach more people in more places? How do we introduce more people in more places to this Jesus who's in the business of changing lives? And our focus unapologetically is on the outside of our churches. We love church people. I'm a church people, and you're a church people. We love church people, but we are focused unapologetically on the people who have yet to step foot into one of our campuses. Why do we do that? We think there's enough churches already for church people. They're on every corner. They're everywhere. But what we want to do is we want to build a different kind of church for people who've given up on church or for people who have never gone to church. And that leads me, by the way, I just want to say one more thing about that. That's a hard church to kind of build because by nature, we're all selfish. I am, maybe you are as well. It takes a group of selfless, sacrificial people to build something for the sake of others. And that's what you are, Crossroads campuses. So go ahead and just go ahead. It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Now that leads me to our next big thing here at Crossroads. Now, back in February and March, I was pushing really hard for our next big thing to be campus number 5 in the Bahamas. And I even volunteered, this is gonna be hard for you to believe, I even volunteered to be the campus pastor. This is the kind of servant you're looking at right here. This is the selflessness of Pastor Phil coming out. But that got voted down. It got voted down. And instead of Campus 5 in the Bahamas, our next big thing is all about kids. It's all about kids. It's all about this generation that we've been talking about for the last several weekends called Generation Z. If you're 20 years or younger, that's you. That's you. That's Generation Z. And as we've been talking about Generation Z, some of the sad statistics that we've lifted out are things like this. They are the most anxious, stressed, lonely, and suicidal generation in history. That's a sad statistic. They're also the first undisputed, truly post-Christian generation in America. And probably one of the most shocking statistics is the fact that only 50% of them have ever stepped foot in a church building for any purpose whatsoever. Whether that's a baptism, whether that's a dedication, Christmas, Easter, funeral, wedding, you name it, only 50% have ever stepped foot in a church. And that's why our focus right now, that's why the crosshairs at Crossroads right now are on the next gen, which is Gen Z. So let me just sum it up for you. Why? Why are we all about Gen Z? Why is that our focus? Well, letter A, because they don't know Jesus. That's reason enough, right? And because Jesus is the one who changes lives. He makes our lives better, and he makes us better at life. And they don't know Jesus. They don't know God's story. They don't know how they fit into God's story. So we're going to focus on them. Letter B, they're everywhere. By the end of this year, 2019, they will be the largest generation in the history of America. 32% of all the people in America will be Gen Z by the end of 2019. They're everywhere. They're your kids. They're your grandkids. They're your great-grandkids. They are your nephews and they are your nieces. They are the kids in the neighborhood that are everywhere. This generation is everywhere. And letter C, if we don't focus on them, this is the truth, friends. God will be forgotten. Christianity is always one generation away from extinction. And we are so close. We are so close to making that a reality. And that's why we want to focus on this next generation. We want to focus on them. Now, speaking of generations and speaking of Christianity being one generation away from extinction, that actually happened back in the days of the Old Testament. A generation grew up and the baton of faith was not passed on to them. And I want to just show you just very briefly what that looked like. But let me first of all set it up. Some of you have read the Old Testament. You tried to read the Old Testament? You got at least through Genesis and maybe Exodus, and then you're done. But anyway, just so you know, God's people are in slavery in Egypt. God raises up a deliverer named Moses, who sets these people free with God's help, lots of God's help. And as long as Moses was in leadership, the people of God, the Israelites' focus was on God. And then Moses dies. And then Moses hands the leadership baton off to a guy named Joshua. And Joshua runs hard and Joshua runs well. He was a good leader and he was a godly leader. And as long as Joshua was in leadership, the Israelites were focused on God. But then Joshua dies. And this is where the baton of faith does not get passed on. And I want to show you what happened. It's recorded for us in a book in the Old Testament called Judges. Judges chapter 2. And I want you to see just what happened. Here's what happened. This is verse 6. After Joshua sent the people away, each of the tribes left to take possession of the land allotted to them. And the Israelites served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and the leaders who outlived him, those who had seen all the great things the Lord had done for Israel. Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. After that generation died, here it is, friends, another generation grew up who did not acknowledge the Lord or remember the mighty things that he had done for Israel. The Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight and served the images of Baal. They abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors who had brought them out of Egypt. And they went after other gods, worshiping the gods of the people around them. And they angered the Lord. And not only did they anger the Lord by forgetting about the Lord and chasing after other gods, but their lives fell apart. I mean, since it's like snowing outside right now and you have nothing to do outdoors today, read the rest of the book of Judges. I just challenge you to do that, because what you're going to find out is it's one train wreck after train wreck after train wreck after train wreck. When people abandoned the Lord, their lives imploded. And the whole book of Judges is like you're looking at a train wreck. And let me just ask you, friends, why did that happen? And the answer is, to go back to verse 10, because this generation grew up and they did not acknowledge the Lord or remember the mighty things he had done for Israel. In other words, the baton of faith did not get passed to them, and they paid for it dearly. That generation paid for it dearly. And let me just ask you, I'm not trying to be a prophet of doom here, but do you think we're close to repeating what we read in Judges chapter 2? Do you think we're close to seeing that in our country today? That this next generation does not know God's story? They're not acknowledging who God is. They're not giving their lives to follow this Jesus. And are they chasing after the gods of our culture? Money, sex, power, comfort, whatever? Are they? I think so. I would argue that that's what we're seeing happening before our very eyes. And if you don't believe that's true, just talk to some of the people at Crossroads who work with this generation. Talk to Jonathan Maley, new dad Jonathan. I'm sure we'll see pictures someday soon here. But he'll tell you right now that at Crossroads Youth, for example, that 60% of the teens who come to Crossroads for youth are unchurched. They have no awareness of God's story. They don't have a Christian worldview. They couldn't tell you the story of God and how they fit into the story of God. Or talk to one of our children's pastors. I was talking to Michelle, one of our kids' pastors at our Cottage Grove campus a few weeks ago. And she was telling me that she was at a local preschool, her other job, and she was reading a book to these preschoolers. And the name of the book, I never heard of this book, of course, but the name of the book was something about an ant on a hill. Anybody know this book? I saw an ant on the railroad track. I don't read preschool books, just so you know. I saw an ant on the railroad track, and she was reading this book, and she got to this place in the book where she said the word pray. And a preschool boy's hand shot up, and she called on him. He said, "What is pray? What is pray?" Not knowing Michelle's other job was she's a pastor, and she then said, "Well, pray is what you do when you talk to God. When you talk to God, that is called prayer." Any idea what the kid asked next? You probably know, don't you? The kid said, "Who's God?" With all seriousness. I mean, he wasn't trying to be a troublemaker. He's like, well, who's God? And friends, this is why we have decided to focus on this next generation. Because they don't know Jesus, and their parents don't know Jesus. And the story of God, the baton of faith, is not being passed on. And if it's not being passed on, as we read in the book of Judges, it doesn't have a good ending. So this is why we have to act. We can dream a million dreams, right? We can dream a million dreams of a better world. We can dream a billion dreams of this next generation knowing Jesus. But if that's all we do, nothing is going to change. So we came up with a plan. And if you've been here the last few weeks, you've been hearing pieces of the plan. The plan, actually, there's two parts to the plan. The very first part of the plan, Pastors James and Eric talked about last weekend, that we're going to change the way we do kids ministry at Crossroads. We're going to change our strategy. We're going to change the way we tell God's story. We're going to change it. Our strategy is okay today, but our strategy is not ideal. So starting in October, we are going to have a different way of proclaiming God's story and passing on faith to the next generation in a very compelling and a very creative kind of a way. Our strategy is not ideal today. But the second part of what we're going to do deals with our spaces, the spaces in which we do kids ministry, because our spaces are not irresistible. Our strategy is not ideal today. We're going to change it. Our spaces are not irresistible, so we're going to change them. Our spaces, the way I describe our spaces is this way. The wow is wanting. The wow isn't quite there. It's lacking. And the way we know that is because we've had educators come in and look over our spaces and they go, eh. We've had designers come in and they go, no. And then we have hundreds of kids that walk into all of our campuses and see our kids' ministry. They kind of go, I'll go in there. But the smile and the expectation and the I can't wait is lacking. And so we looked around and we found a group called Plain Joe Studios out of California. Two guys that used to work at Disney, left Disney and started a company because they're Christians and they want to resource churches. They want to create in churches this kind of a wow environment that you see when you go to Disney. And so we hired these people. And they put a plan together. They met with us. They talked to us. They loved Minnesota. And they came up with sort of no shock here, a lakeside theme for us. Is that shocking to you or not? No. They came kind of with an outdoor lake kind of a theme. And in fact, some of the designs look like this. So when kids go in to check in, when you're going to the lake, there's like the general store you stop at. It'll have this kind of a vibe when kids are checking in, and then the entryway, for example, will have this kind of a look to it. And then the large group space, every campus gets a lake. So Cottage Grove, you get a lake, and Hastings, you get a lake, and Eagan, you get a lake, and Woodbury, you get a lake, and I hope I get some fish, but we'll see, But everybody's going to have a lake. We're going to have this wonderful, wonderful thing. So that's what the design they came up with. And again, kind of to put it all together, the theme is a lakeside adventure awaits you. We want kids on the weekend to be as excited to go to church as they are when they're going to the lake. That's the vibe, that's the feel, that's the energy, that's the excitement that we want to try to create. Our goal is this. We want to capture the attention of our kids so that Jesus can capture their hearts. We want to capture their attention so that Jesus can do what Jesus does well, to capture and to change their hearts. And our dream, if all falls together, if the plan goes beyond a dream, our dream is that kids will wake up their parents on the weekend and say, "Get up, you lazy bones, because we're going to church." Now, can you imagine that happening? I grew up in a church, and some of you have heard this, where my dad on Sunday morning, because I hated going to church, my dad on Sunday morning took pots and pans and banged them together to get me to get up out of bed to go to church. And then they would drag me literally to church. We want to create such an amazing environment where it's fun for kids to learn about God. We want to create that kind of environment so that kids are shaking their parents and like, "Get up, you sluggard. We're going to church." That's what we want to create. We want our kids to be so stoked and have so much fun learning about Jesus that they don't just come to Crossroads, but then they go and they tell their friends who then will come with them. Their friends who maybe don't know Jesus, their school friends and their neighborhood friends and the friends they hang out with and play sports with. And friends, this is what we want to do, and we want to do it. I want you to keep in mind what this is all about. This is all about this baton of faith that you and I hold. It's all about passing on this baton of faith to the next generation so they can know God's story, so they can find themselves in God's story, and so they can be changed by the God of story. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. And the question, of course, because to pull this off, this plan that we're talking about, sorry, I don't want to point at you. To pull this off, we need more than 1 million dreams. Shocking, isn't it? We need more than 1 million dreams to put this plan into motion across 4 campuses at Crossroads. In fact, we need more than 1 million dreams. And in fact, we need more than $1 million. This plan that we put together, is actually a little bit over $1.2 million to create that kind of a wow, fun environment. So the question, of course, is it worth it? Is it worth it? And you get to vote today. You get to vote whether or not it's worth it by what you decide to commit to giving in just a few moments. But before we go there, I just want to go back to why we're doing this. We're doing this because Gen Z is everywhere. And we're doing this because Gen Z doesn't know Jesus. And we're doing this because if the baton of faith does not get placed into their hands, Christianity as we know it will no longer be. So, how important is it that we move on this? How important is it that we move quickly on this? Well, you heard us talk at least once before about what's called the 4-14 window. And all that 4-14 window is 83% of those who decide to follow Jesus do so between the ages of 4 and 14. Let that sink in a little bit. 83% decide to follow Jesus between the ages of 4 and 14. And here's the next thing. After the age of 19, the probability rate of someone following Jesus is a mere measly 6%. 6%. And that's why we feel the impetus, we feel the tendency right now that we need to move. We need to do something now. The baton of faith needs to get passed on now. And speaking of the baton of faith, I don't know how many of you were alive in 2004. Some of you were. But maybe you remember the 2004 Summer Olympic Games in Athens. Some of you do. The American women's 4x100 relay team was a lock to win gold medal. I mean, Marion Jones, Lauren Williams, fastest runners on the planet. They had the best qualifying time. Everybody in the world was like handing them the gold medal before the race was even done. Do you remember what happened though? Did they win gold medal? No. Did they win the silver medal? No. Did they win the bronze medal? You know, they didn't win that either. Now, why didn't they win? They were a lock to win, fastest runners on the planet. Well, here's why. I'm going to just show you a little clip of what happened. Here is why they didn't win. Wait for it. USA in the middle. Here's the baton and missed it by that much. Yeah. They never made the exchange. It never happened within the exchange zone. And so those 4 runners, those 4 American women, fastest runners in the world, they go down in history with a DNF next to their name. Did not finish because the baton never got passed. You see, in a relay race, it's not so much whether or not you had the fastest runners. No, in a relay race, what it comes down to is that 1.9 seconds when that baton gets passed to the next runner. And they didn't pass it. And the passing of that baton in that 1.9 seconds in that exchange zone is the game changer. And that's why our American team went home empty-handed. And that's a shame, isn't it? That's a shame. That's a little, a little mark in history that we would like to kind of get rid of. But you know what? What's even more sad is if this generation that we're talking about here today, if they don't get the baton of faith in their hands in that exchange zone, that 4 to 14 window, I don't even want to think about that. Do you? I don't want to think about the ramifications of that. And that's why we are stepping out as a church and doing what we're doing. Because we have a whole generation that needs to hear about Jesus. They're everywhere. They're everywhere we look. They're our kids. They're our grandkids. They're our nephews. They're our nieces. They're the kids next door. And we have a baton of faith to hand them. But nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change unless you and me, unless we are willing to sacrifice, to get that handoff to happen. We preachers, let me just give you, we exaggerate once in a while. Shocking, yeah. But this is no preacher exaggeration to say to you what I'm going to say to you next. If you invest in this thing that we're calling For the Next, it might be the most important investment that you've ever made in your life. I believe that. If you decide to invest in this thing, we're going to ask you to in just a moment, but if you decide to invest in this, in making this handoff happen, it might be the most significant money that you'll ever invest in anything. Because you think about what might happen. Think about that one kid who might give his life to Jesus as a result of this plan that we've put together. And think about the ripple effect as that kid shares his faith, maybe with mom or dad or brother or sister. And then think about the echo that one kid's faith will have on his or her family and maybe on the next generation after him or her. Just think about that. Just push this thing out a little bit. And that's why, friends, that's why we've been asking again and again and again throughout this series, what is the faith of the next generation worth? Is it worth me putting my hand up and giving some money to it? And then everybody's asking this question, well, how in the world do we raise $1.2 million? It's a good question. The more important question is that first one. Well, how do we do it? Well, let's go ahead. Let's do it. How do we raise $1.2 million? Well, one person could donate $1.2 million. Now, as I said this last night at our Saturday night service, my phone literally started ringing. I had right here in my pocket as I said, well, one person can give 1.2, and my phone started ringing. I thought, I've got to answer this. It was not a good call. No, it wasn't. 3 people can donate $400,000. 50 people can donate $24,000. 100 people can donate $12,000. 500 people can donate $2,400. 1,000 people can donate $1,200. 1,800 people can donate $666.66. Or 3,000 people can donate $400. What's the point? The point is find yourself somewhere here. You can't maybe do this, but my guess is every one of us can do that. That's skipping Starbucks once a week. I mean, we all can find ourselves somewhere on this. My wife and I, just so you know, and by the way, I don't want a participation trophy in saying this. My wife and I, we're donating some stock, some investment stock that was for my eventual retirement. And we're given this stock, and so I just want you to know that now I'm retiring, I did the math, in 2073. That's when my... I am going to be 115 years old, and I will still be up here speaking to you. What? Did you say something? No. You don't want that. Trust me. No. Just kidding about that second part of it. We are donating some stock. My wife and I, we give 10% back to this church of what we make. We do it gladly. No one twists our arm. We do it because God's good. We do it because we believe in what this church is all about. So for the next campaign, we're taking another 10%. So 10% we're going to give, and we're taking another 10% of what we're going to make this year. And we're going to give it to this campaign because we want to. Because there's no better investment than investing in this handoff right here, giving this baton of faith to your kids, to your grandkids, to your nephews and nieces, and to the kids in our neighborhoods. There's no greater investment. So what we're going to do across all of our campuses, we're all together on this, is in just a moment, we're going to sing a song together. And there are these cards inside the little For the Next brochure. If you want to go grab one of those right now, would you do that? I'm not going to stop until everybody just grabs a card at least. Whether you fill it out or not is up to you. But if everybody just grab a card, they're inside the little brochures. We're going to give you a moment right now to begin to fill this card out, okay? To begin to fill this card out. This is your pledge. This is you saying, I'm in on this. And then in just a few moments across all of our campuses, there's going to be a song sung. And during the song being sung, we're going to come forward at all of our campuses and drop our cards in our boats, whether it's a canoe or a kayak or whatever you find at your campus. We're going to drop these commitment cards into these seafaring devices, all right? We're going to do that. And we're going to say, I'm in on this. This is what I'm in on this. And here's the little thing about the song we picked. The song we picked is a song that talks about God's faithfulness. It's a song that talks about, we believe that just as God has moved in the past, that just as God has moved in the past, we believe that God is still in the business of moving today. And we picked that song because we've seen it lived out. Some of you were around like back in 2007 when we had our very first campaign. We called it Crazy. We were 1/3 of the size we are today. And guess what? That group of people, 1,000 Crossroadians, pledged $3.2 million so that we could be opening up a Woodbury campus and so that we could be opening up an Eagan campus. $3.2 million. 1,000 people did that. And then like 5 years ago, we did it again. God moved again. And another $1 million came in so we could start our Cottage Grove campus. And then just 2 years ago, we did it all over again. God moved again so we could open up our Hastings campus. God's moved through the generosity of people like you and me. And now this is our turn. This is our turn. Let's make that investment for the sake of the next generation. So in just a moment, we're going to sing a song together. And during that song, across all of our campuses, we're going to invite you to move out, and to drop your card in a boat. But before we do that, I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray just for God to do what only God can do, which is to prompt generosity in me and you. So let's pray together. Father God, I pray right now for myself, but I also pray on behalf of every person who's tuning in. God, that you would give us the courage to trust you, the courage to write down maybe even kind of a crazy amount of money and donate that for the sake of the next generation. And God, it's our prayer. It's our very, very simple prayer that one and only one thing would happen because we get out of our seats and move forward and commit to this thing, that you, God, that you would capture the attention of the next generation so that your son, Jesus, can capture the attention and the affection of their hearts. God, we want your story to be known. God, we want every kid on this planet to know how much you love them. And the fact that you sent your son, your only son, your one and only son to die so they might have life in you. And God, we're so grateful that you did more than just dream dreams, but you sent your son, Jesus, to make life abundantly and life eternally possible for us. And so whatever we do, God, we give back to say thanks to you and for the sake of the next generation. We pray this in your name. Amen.